I think the question is, why haven't we overcome the blight of our civilization, which is half of the world's population, or almost, live battling hunger and disease and stigma? So I think if we want to really define inequality, it's a bleak outlook for the majority of the population, as the Oxfam report is pointing to, and the difference between an optimistic future for a few privileged.
Well, hang on, wait a minute, because you are assuming that not having a large share of the overall wealth means that you are in poverty, whereas you may just be in relative poverty. Actually, your living standard may be higher.
Relative poverty is what, $2 a day?
What are the policy decisions?
So let's look at this important Oxfam report. I think it underscores two main issues. One is that it highlights the trend or the history of the rich crafting policies, perpetuating policies that favour the rich, particularly, namely, tax havens. And I'm fully in support of their recommendations of stopping tax havens, sharing information about tax avoidance. And the second main issue of the report...
Which I'd say is what the G7 and the G8 say they're committed to.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go one step further in a moment. But the second point they make, which is the need for investing in social programmes to lift the poverty, the poor out of poverty, namely health, education programmes.
There's actually a point on that I think was really important in the Oxfam report, because they don't like the idea that anybody but the state provides that education and health, and I think that's really, really dogmatic of them. And actually, it should be that you want the effective person who's delivering that education, whether that person's in the public or the private sector, doesn't matter to the students' learning.
Would that mean something like the Gates Foundation you actually think is a bad idea?
Not at all. I think it's great. And
but does Oxfam think it's a bad idea because Bill Gates is not the state?
I actually came here at 1 hour's notice. I haven't had time to read the report fully, but I wanted to say that I've been working with Sir James Mirrlees, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and we've come up with specific proposals that address some of the issues that Oxfam have been talking about. So you talked about Bill Gates. Well, actually, not all, as Bill Gates has demonstrated, not all rich people ignore the issues of poverty. They actually want to invest, find solutions, use their time and resources, and so on. So we've come up with a scheme that actually taps into the philanthropist's desire to lift people out of poverty. So one of those things that we've designed is attracting that type of investment, and we've put forward matching ideas, which the government has taken up. They've set up UK Aid Match, and it's using their aid budgets to match private sector donations. But I want to go one step further and address what Oxfam talked about, which is the tax havens. And there's a lot of talk, as you said, at the G20 and the G8 about corporate tax avoidance. Now, what Jim and I have proposed, and we're about to call for, is a corporate levy, so that 1% of all corporate income actually is dedicated to international development.
What's your reaction to that? Because, of course, a lot of your members do fit into that band.
We had the Tobin tax as well before.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid I'm not in favour of that type of thing. I do think that it's interesting, of course, what we've seen in the last week or so in the UK has been...
What's wrong with the idea? Because it would be...
I will address that and just say, but what we've seen in the UK, of course, is that we've got a 0.7% target, and the money is just being pushed into it without any real concern of how that money is being spent effectively. And I think that's exactly what corporates would want as well. Nobody's calling for money to be spent ineffectively, or at least I hope they're not. And you want to make sure that money is being spent effectively. The best way, of course, is trade. And when we could open up trade and open up markets for these people,
What about corporate tax avoidance? Because this is a big issue.
It is a big issue, but it's a big issue that's been around for a long time. People, the present Chancellor, previous Chancellors have all been dealing with this. And I have to point out, of course, that much of the tax avoidance rests with governments themselves. I mean, they're the ones who put together the tax system. You can hardly complain if people use the tax system to their own advantage. No company exists to pay more tax than they have to.
I have to agree with James on the point about how do we spend the money and what a government's doing with taxpayers' money. And in fact, I'm making a film called Disparity, aptly named. And I think as taxpayers, we have a right to know how our money is spent, what is aid being used for, and how effective is aid.
All right. All good questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.